In the spring of 2023, a hiker stumbled upon something that would forever change the quiet mountain town of Pine Ridge, Colorado. Deep in the dense forest, partially buried beneath fallen pine needles and scattered leaves, lay the remains of 18-year-old Destiny Martinez. She had been missing for 3 weeks. The community had searched tirelessly, holding candlelight vigils and plastering her photograph on every storefront window. But the man leading that search, the respected sheriff who organized the volunteer efforts, who comforted Destiny's grieving grandmother, who stood before news cameras pleading for information, was the same man who had put her in that shallow grave. For 20 years, Sheriff Bradley Hendricks had been Pine Ridge's golden boy, a dedicated public servant, a devoted family man, a pillar of the community. His campaign slogan read, "Integrity, service, community," and residents believed every word. They trusted him with their safety, their secrets, their most vulnerable citizens. In Pine Ridge, Colorado, everyone thought they knew Sheriff Bradley Hendricks. They were dead wrong. The discovery of Destiny's body would expose a web of manipulation, abuse, and betrayal that reached the highest levels of law enforcement. It would reveal how a man with a badge had systematically groomed a vulnerable teenager, exploited her trust, and when she became inconvenient to his carefully constructed life, eliminated her with the same calculated precision he once used to solve crimes. This isn't just another true crime story. This is the disturbing reality of how predators hide behind authority, how they weaponize respect and trust to destroy innocent lives. This is the story of how a badge became a weapon and how trust became a trap. Before we examine this chilling case, hit that subscribe button. Cases like this remind us why we need to stay informed about the predators hiding in plain sight. Knowledge is our best defense against those who would abuse their power. The Bradley Hendricks case exposes uncomfortable truths about the people we're taught to trust without question. It shows us how easily a community can be deceived, how quickly a hero can become a monster, and how the most dangerous predators are often the ones wearing uniforms. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about the thin blue line. It will show you that sometimes the call is coming from inside the house, and it will prove that in Pine Ridge, Colorado, the biggest threat to public safety wasn't lurking in the shadows. It was sitting behind the sheriff's desk. At 42 years old, Bradley Hendricks embodied everything Pine Ridge, Colorado wanted in a sheriff. Standing 6 feet tall with graying temples and a firm handshake, he commanded respect the moment he entered any room. His uniform was always pressed, his boots polished to a mirror shine, and his badge gleamed like a symbol of unwavering justice. Pine Ridge itself seemed designed for someone like Hendricks. Nestled between towering Rocky Mountain peaks and surrounded by endless pine forests, this town of 8,500 residents thrived on tourist dollars during ski season and maintained its Norman Rockwell charm year-round. Main Street featured family-owned businesses that had operated for generations. The local diner served coffee in ceramic mugs and everyone knew their neighbors' names. Crime here was predictable and manageable. Drunk tourists during peak season, occasional domestic disputes, teenagers spray-painting water towers, the kind of problems that made residents feel safe, secure in their belief that real danger existed somewhere else, in big cities, in places where people didn't look out for each other. Hendricks had built his reputation methodically over 2 decades. Starting as a patrol officer, fresh out of the police academy, he worked every holiday, volunteered for overtime, and treated every case, no matter how small, with professional dedication. His colleagues respected his thoroughness, his superiors appreciated his reliability. Citizens trusted his judgment. The sheriff's personal life appeared equally spotless. Married to Rachel, his high school sweetheart, for 18 years. Father to twin boys who played Little League Baseball, active member of St. Matthew's Lutheran Church, where he ushered every Sunday and helped organize the annual charity drive. His campaign posters from the previous election still decorated storefront windows. Hendricks, integrity, service, community. During election season, Hendricks had walked door to door, shaking hands and making promises. He spoke passionately about protecting Pine Ridge's values, about keeping their children safe, about maintaining the trust between law enforcement and the community. Voters believed every word because his actions had always matched his rhetoric. But here's what most people don't understand about predators. They don't look like monsters. They look like the person you'd want your daughter to marry, the neighbor who helps with your groceries, the authority figure who makes you feel protected. The most dangerous predators are master manipulators who understand that respectability is the perfect camouflage. Red flags aren't always obvious. Sometimes they're hidden behind badges and smiles. We're conditioned to trust authority figures without question, to assume that someone who swore an oath to protect and serve couldn't possibly be the threat we should fear most. In Pine Ridge, everyone knew everyone else's business, or so they believed. Bradley Hendricks had mastered the art of hiding his darkest impulses behind a facade of community service and family values. While residents felt safe knowing their sheriff was watching over them, they had no idea what or who he was really watching. The perfect predator doesn't break into your home. He's already inside, wearing a uniform that commands respect and carrying keys to every door in town. 17-year-old Destiny Martinez arrived in Pine Ridge carrying more pain than most adults could handle. Just 6 months earlier, she had found her mother unconscious on the bathroom floor of their Denver apartment, needle still in her arm. The paramedics tried for 20 minutes, but Maria Martinez was gone, another casualty in the city's losing battle against addiction. Destiny's world collapsed that day. She had no father in her life, no siblings, no support system beyond her grandmother Rosa, who drove from Pine Ridge to collect the traumatized teenager and bring her to what she hoped would be safety and stability. The transition proved brutal. Denver's urban chaos had at least been familiar. The noise, the crowds, the constant movement that matched the turmoil in her heart. Pine Ridge felt suffocating. Everyone stared at the new girl with the thick accent and second-hand clothes. Teachers whispered about her situation. Classmates kept their distance from the troubled kid whose mother had died from drugs. Rosa Martinez worked double shifts at Pine Ridge Diner, serving coffee and comfort food to tourists and locals alike. She left for work at 5 a.m. and didn't return until nearly midnight, leaving Destiny alone in their cramped trailer on the outskirts of town. The isolation was complete. No friends, no family present, no one to notice when depression settled over her like a heavy blanket. Destiny's grades plummeted. She stopped attending school regularly, spent days in bed, and occasionally drove without a license just to feel some sense of control over her life. It was during one of these reckless drives that she first encountered Sheriff Bradley Hendricks. The traffic stop should have been routine. Hendricks pulled over the beat-up Honda Civic for weaving slightly across the center line. When he approached the driver's window and saw a young Latina girl with tears streaming down her face, he could have written a ticket and moved on. Instead, he saw opportunity. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice gentle and concerned. "You look upset." Destiny broke down completely, sobbing about her mother, her loneliness, her fear of getting in trouble. Hendricks listened with practiced patience, occasionally offering tissues and words of comfort. When she admitted she didn't have a license, he could have arrested her. Instead, he chose mercy. "I'm not going to ticket you today," he said, handing back her identification, "but I want to help you get properly licensed. Can't have you driving around illegally. It's dangerous for everyone." To Rosa Martinez, this felt like divine intervention. A respected sheriff looking out for her troubled granddaughter, an authority figure willing to help instead of punish. She thanked Hendricks repeatedly when he stopped by their trailer that evening, praising his kindness and dedication to the community. Destiny felt something she hadn't experienced since her mother's death. Hope. Here was a strong, respected man who seemed to genuinely care about her welfare, someone who had the power to make her life better, or worse, and had chosen kindness. Predators have an uncanny ability to identify vulnerable targets. They look for isolation, trauma, and desperation. They seek out individuals who lack strong support systems, who crave attention and guidance, who won't be immediately missed if they disappear. Warning signs of grooming often begin with excessive kindness from authority figures, especially when that attention feels like rescue to someone drowning in pain. What happened next followed a predictable pattern that experts in predatory behavior know all too well. Bradley Hendricks didn't immediately reveal his true intentions. Instead, he began a calculated campaign of manipulation that would span several months, each step designed to isolate Destiny further while positioning himself as her savior. The helpful visits started innocently enough. Hendricks would stop by the Martinez trailer after his shifts, always with a plausible reason. He brought pamphlets about driver's education courses. He offered to help Destiny with her school enrollment paperwork. He even arranged for her to receive free counseling sessions through a county program, presenting himself as a caring public servant, going above and beyond for a struggling citizen. Rosa Martinez felt grateful beyond words. Here was the sheriff himself, taking personal interest in her granddaughter's well-being. When Hendricks suggested that Destiny might benefit from having a positive male role model, Rosa agreed enthusiastically. She worked such long hours that she barely saw her granddaughter, and the guilt was eating her alive. The gift started small: a used textbook for her math class, a gift card to the local clothing store, a cell phone for emergencies, which Hendricks claimed was standard procedure for at-risk youth in the community. Each gesture seemed thoughtful, appropriate, and motivated by genuine concern, but the phone served a darker purpose. Hendricks began texting Destiny daily, initially with encouraging messages about her progress in school and driving lessons. The conversations gradually became more personal. He asked about her feelings, her fears, her dreams for the future. He shared carefully selected details about his own life, his demanding job, his stress, his occasional loneliness even within his marriage. This false intimacy is a hallmark of predatory behavior. By sharing seemingly personal information, Hendricks created an artificial sense of closeness and trust. Destiny began to feel special, chosen, important to someone who held real power in her community. The grieving teenager, starved for meaningful connection, eagerly reciprocated with her own secrets and vulnerabilities. The manipulation intensified when Hendricks began positioning himself as the only person who truly understood her pain. He spoke knowingly about loss, about feeling like an outsider, about the weight of expectations. He convinced Destiny that others in Pine Ridge looked down on her because of her mother's addiction and her family's financial struggles. Only he saw her true worth, he insisted. Only he could help her reach her potential. Isolation tactics became more sophisticated. Hendricks subtly discouraged Destiny from making friends at school, suggesting that teenage relationships were superficial and that she was too mature for such childish pursuits. He criticized her grandmother's parenting style, implying that Rosa didn't truly understand what Destiny needed. He even arranged for Destiny to ride along during some of his patrol shifts, claiming it would help her understand law enforcement and possibly inspire a career path. These ride-alongs served multiple purposes. They gave Hendricks uninterrupted time with Destiny while appearing completely professional to outside observers. They also demonstrated his authority and control over her environment. In the patrol car, he was literally in the driver's seat, deciding where they went and what they talked about. The boundary erosion happened so gradually that Destiny barely noticed. Hendricks began touching her shoulder during conversations, supposedly for comfort. He started calling her sweetheart and beautiful, claiming these were just friendly terms of endearment. He suggested that their relationship was special and unique, something that others might not understand or appreciate. This manipulation is textbook predatory behavior. If this case is opening your eyes to these tactics, share this video to help others recognize the signs. The psychology behind grooming exploits fundamental human needs for connection, validation, and security. Hendricks understood that Destiny's recent trauma had left her desperate for stability and guidance. By positioning himself as her protector and confidant, he was filling a void that made her increasingly dependent on his approval and presence. The power dynamics made escape nearly impossible, even as warning bells began ringing in Destiny's subconscious. How could she complain about the sheriff's behavior when he had been nothing but helpful? Who would believe her concerns about a respected law enforcement officer? What would happen to her grandmother's job if she caused trouble for Pine Ridge's most important public figure? By winter, Hendricks had successfully isolated Destiny from potential support systems while making himself indispensable to her emotional well-being. The trap was set, and the prey was ready to be caught. Bradley Hendricks waited with calculated patience for one specific date, February 12, 2023, Destiny Martinez's 18th birthday. The moment she legally became an adult, the predator who had spent months grooming her finally revealed his true intentions. The timing wasn't coincidental. Hendricks understood the legal implications of his actions and had structured his manipulation to avoid statutory charges. But legal technicalities couldn't erase the fundamental truth. This was a relationship built on months of psychological manipulation, power imbalance, and exploitation of a vulnerable teenager's trauma. The physical relationship began in the most calculated way possible. Hendricks convinced Destiny that their connection was special, that what they felt for each other transcended normal social boundaries. He painted their situation as a love story that others simply wouldn't understand. Age was just a number, he insisted. What mattered was their deep emotional bond. Secrecy became paramount, and Hendricks used every tool of his law enforcement training to maintain it. He knew which roads had no surveillance cameras, which locations were never patrolled by other officers, and how to manipulate duty schedules to create opportunities. 20 years of police work had taught him how to avoid detection. Now he used that knowledge to hide his crimes. The patrol car became their primary meeting place during those first weeks. Hendricks would pick up Destiny under the guise of routine community outreach, driving to secluded areas where they could be alone. The vehicle that symbolized protection and safety for Pine Ridge residents became a prison for a confused and manipulated young woman. Later, Hendricks gained access to the evidence room at the sheriff's department after hours. The irony was sickening. The space designed to preserve justice became a location for ongoing injustice. He also had keys to a hunting cabin owned by the county, used occasionally for official retreats. This remote location, surrounded by dense forest and accessible only by a dirt road, offered complete privacy for his exploitation. From Destiny's perspective, the relationship felt like salvation and confusion wrapped together. She genuinely believed she was in love with Bradley Hendricks, the man who had rescued her from her lowest point, who had shown her kindness when nobody else cared, who had made her feel valued and special. Her traumatized mind couldn't distinguish between manipulation and genuine affection. The teenager who had lost her mother, her home, and her sense of belonging now felt chosen by someone important and powerful. Hendricks reinforced this feeling constantly, telling her she was mature beyond her years, that she understood him in ways his wife never could, that their connection was deeper than ordinary relationships. But the web was tightening with each encounter. The deeper Destiny became involved, the harder escape became. Hendricks began taking photographs during their encounters, claiming they were romantic mementos. In reality, these images became tools of control. He could destroy her reputation, her future, her relationship with her grandmother, if she ever tried to leave or expose him. The psychological prison of manipulation is nearly impossible to escape without outside help. Abusers justify their actions by convincing victims that they're willing participants in something beautiful and special. They create alternate realities where exploitation feels like love, where control feels like protection, where isolation feels like intimacy. Meanwhile, the public sheriff Hendricks continued his charade flawlessly. He attended church services with his wife and sons, spoke at school assemblies about making good choices, and maintained his reputation as Pine Ridge's most dedicated public servant. The contrast between his public persona and private predatory behavior was staggering. Every move was calculated, every risk assessed and minimized. Hendricks believed he had created the perfect crime, an ongoing violation hidden behind legal technicalities, community respect, and a victim too traumatized and manipulated to recognize her own exploitation. The phone call came on a cold February morning, just 3 weeks after Destiny's 18th birthday. Her voice trembled as she spoke the words that would shatter Bradley Hendricks' carefully constructed world. "I'm pregnant." Destiny had taken the test in the cramped bathroom of her grandmother's trailer, hands shaking as she watched the pink lines appear. For a moment, she felt something she hadn't experienced since her mother's death. Pure joy. She and Bradley were going to have a baby. This pregnancy would force him to leave his wife, to make their relationship public, to build the family she had always dreamed of having. In her naive 18-year-old mind, this was the answer to everything. No more secrecy, no more hiding, no more feeling like she was stealing moments from someone else's life. The baby would prove that what they had was real, legitimate, worth fighting for. Bradley Hendricks' reaction was the polar opposite of what Destiny expected. The color drained from his face as he processed the magnitude of this disaster. Everything he had worked for, his career, his reputation, his marriage, his standing in the community, was suddenly at risk because of one careless moment. The caring mentor who had spent months positioning himself as Destiny's protector vanished instantly. In his place stood a desperate man facing the destruction of his entire life. His voice turned cold and calculating as he outlined what needed to happen next. "You have to take care of this," he said, his words cutting through Destiny's dreams like a blade. "There are clinics in Denver. I'll pay for it." This never happened. But Destiny refused. This baby represented hope, love, and the future she had been promised. She wouldn't destroy the one good thing that had come from their relationship. She wanted to keep the child and raise it together, as a family. The ultimatum was delivered with the authority of a man accustomed to having his orders followed. Get rid of the pregnancy, or face the consequences. Hendricks outlined exactly what those consequences would look like. Exposure of their relationship, social destruction, her grandmother losing her job, possible charges for interfering with a police investigation. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Hendricks faced losing his $85,000 annual salary, his pension, his marriage to Rachel, his relationship with his twin sons, and his reputation as Pine Ridge's most respected law enforcement officer. A scandal involving a teenage girl would destroy everything he had built over 2 decades. But Destiny's refusal to comply revealed something that terrified Hendricks even more than professional ruin. She was no longer the malleable, grateful teenager he had manipulated for months. Pregnancy had given her a sense of purpose and power that threatened his control completely. The mask was slipping. The patient, caring sheriff who had positioned himself as her savior was being replaced by a desperate predator whose true nature was finally emerging. Crisis has a way of revealing who people really are beneath their carefully constructed facades. For pregnant teenagers in abusive situations, this moment of defiance often triggers escalated danger. The abuser realizes that their victim is no longer completely under their control, that their secret might be exposed, that their carefully planned exploitation is about to unravel. The confrontation that followed would determine whether Destiny Martinez lived to see her 19th birthday. And in Pine Ridge, Colorado, everyone was about to learn what Bradley Hendricks was truly capable of when his back was against the wall. The weeks following the pregnancy announcement transformed Bradley Hendricks from a controlled predator into a desperate man on the edge of complete breakdown. As March arrived in Pine Ridge, the pressure from all sides began mounting to unbearable levels. Destiny's demands escalated with each passing day. She wanted him to leave his wife immediately. She wanted to move in together openly. She wanted to announce their relationship to the community and start planning for their baby's future. In her mind, the pregnancy had changed everything. They were going to be a family, and she was tired of hiding. The 18-year-old had no understanding of the catastrophic consequences her demands would create. She saw only the fairy tale ending she had been promised through months of manipulation. But for Hendricks, each conversation felt like a noose tightening around his neck. His behavioral changes became impossible to hide. Deputy Sarah Chen noticed that her usually punctual sheriff arrived late to work repeatedly, looking exhausted and distracted. During department meetings, Hendricks would lose his train of thought mid-sentence or snap at subordinates over minor issues. His wife Rachel mentioned to friends that Bradley seemed stressed about budget constraints and personnel issues. The careful facade that had protected him for months was cracking under the strain. Hendricks knew that people were starting to notice, but he couldn't control the anxiety that was consuming him from the inside. Time was running out in the most literal sense. By April, Destiny's pregnancy would become visible to anyone paying attention. Her grandmother would notice. Her classmates would whisper. The entire community would start asking questions about the identity of the father. The mathematical certainty of exposure drove Hendricks to consider the unthinkable. If Destiny wouldn't eliminate the pregnancy, and if she refused to disappear quietly, then there was only one solution that would preserve his life and career. The thought crept into his mind during sleepless nights, growing stronger each time he pictured his professional ruin and public humiliation. The plan formed gradually over several weeks of careful calculation. Hendricks began researching remote locations where a body might never be found. He studied weather patterns and hunting schedules. He mentally catalogued which of his weapons would be most effective while leaving minimal forensic evidence. The final preparations took place during the first week of April. Hendricks retrieved an untraceable .38 caliber revolver from the evidence room, a weapon confiscated years earlier from a drug bust. He purchased a shovel with cash from a hardware store in a neighboring town, wearing civilian clothes and a baseball cap to avoid recognition. Most chilling of all, he created fake documentation suggesting that Destiny Martinez had expressed interest in running away to California. He forged a note in handwriting that resembled hers, claiming she felt overwhelmed by small-town life and wanted to start fresh somewhere new. What happens next is truly unthinkable, but before we continue, make sure you're subscribed, because cases like this show us the importance of staying aware of the dangers around us. The escalation from emotional manipulation to calculated murder demonstrates how quickly dangerous situations can spiral beyond control. When someone's behavior changes dramatically, especially someone in a position of power, it's crucial to recognize these warning signs before tragedy strikes. In Pine Ridge, Colorado, the trusted sheriff was about to cross a line that would transform him from predator to killer. Thursday, April 13, 2023, dawned gray and drizzly in Pine Ridge. The spring rain that had been falling steadily for 2 days would provide perfect cover for what Bradley Hendricks had planned. At 3:47 p.m., he sent Destiny a text message that would seal her fate. "Meet me at the cabin. I've made my decision about us and the baby. It's time to start our new life together." Destiny Martinez read those words with a heart full of hope. After weeks of arguments and pressure, Bradley had finally come to his senses. He was ready to leave his wife, to claim their child, to build the family she had dreamed of since learning she was pregnant. She drove to the remote hunting cabin, believing she was heading toward her future. The cabin sat 15 miles outside Pine Ridge, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through dense pine forest. Hendricks had chosen this location carefully. No cell phone reception, no nearby witnesses, no chance of interruption. He arrived 30 minutes early, using the time to prepare himself mentally for what he was about to do. When Destiny's battered Honda Civic pulled up to the cabin, Hendricks was waiting on the porch with a bouquet of wildflowers and a smile that masked his deadly intentions. She ran into his arms, tears of joy streaming down her face as she spoke excitedly about baby names and their future together. The confrontation came without warning. As they sat on the cabin's couch, Hendricks calmly explained that there would be no future together, no public relationship, no baby, no happily ever after. He had decided to stay with his wife and preserve his career, and Destiny needed to disappear from Pine Ridge permanently. The hope in Destiny's eyes transformed into confusion, then disbelief, then desperate panic as she realized the true purpose of this meeting. She tried to run, but Hendricks blocked the door. When she attempted to push past him, he grabbed her wrist with enough force to leave bruises. The struggle that followed was brief but violent. Destiny fought with the desperation of someone who suddenly understood that her life was in danger. She clawed at his face, leaving scratches that would later require explanation. She screamed for help that would never come. She begged the man she thought loved her to remember their connection, their promises, their unborn child. Bradley Hendricks pulled the .38 caliber revolver from his jacket with the cold precision of a man who had already crossed every moral boundary. The first shot struck Destiny in the chest, silencing her pleas instantly. The second shot, fired as she lay dying on the cabin floor, ended 2 lives, hers and that of their unborn child. The immediate aftermath revealed the true depth of Hendricks' depravity. Standing over the body of the teenager he had manipulated, exploited, and murdered, he felt no remorse, only relief that his problem had been solved and calculation about the cover-up that would follow. This represents the final consequence of unchecked predatory behavior, the moment when an abuser realizes that their victim poses an existential threat to their carefully constructed life. Some predators will go to any length, including murder, to protect themselves from exposure and consequences. In that remote cabin, surrounded by the beauty of Colorado's wilderness, evil had triumphed over innocence. But the man who thought he had committed the perfect crime was about to learn that some secrets refused to stay buried. Bradley Hendricks spent the next 4 hours transforming from killer back into Pine Ridge's respected sheriff. Using every skill from his 2 decades in law enforcement, he methodically eliminated evidence and constructed an elaborate cover story that would fool his colleagues, his community, and initially even seasoned investigators. The body disposal demonstrated chilling calculation. Hendricks drove Destiny's Honda to a remote section of forest 3 miles from the cabin, then returned on foot to collect her remains. He buried her in a shallow grave, scattering pine needles and fallen branches to camouflage the disturbed earth. The .38 caliber revolver was cleaned and returned to the evidence room before his shift ended. The manufactured disappearance began the next morning when Rosa Martinez called the sheriff's department, frantic that her granddaughter hadn't come home. Hendricks personally took the call, his voice filled with professional concern as he assured the elderly woman that Pine Ridge's finest would find her missing granddaughter. Taking control of the investigation was perhaps the most sickening aspect of Hendricks' cover-up. He organized the search teams, coordinated with neighboring departments, and held daily press conferences pleading for information about Destiny's whereabouts. Standing before cameras with Rosa Martinez beside him, he spoke movingly about the community's dedication to bringing the young woman home safely. The fake runaway narrative gained traction when Hendricks conveniently discovered the forged note in Destiny's bedroom during a routine search. The handwriting analysis would later prove inconclusive, and the story about California dreams seemed plausible to those who didn't know Destiny well. Even Rosa began to wonder if her granddaughter had indeed fled Pine Ridge to escape her painful memories. For 3 weeks, Hendricks maintained this charade with Oscar-worthy performance. He organized candlelight vigils, coordinated volunteer search parties, and comforted grieving community members while secretly knowing exactly where Destiny's body lay buried. He used official resources to stage fake leads, sending search teams to distant counties while avoiding the area where he had committed murder. The unraveling began on May 4th, when hiker Marcus Thompson discovered human remains partially exposed after recent heavy rainfall. The spring storms that had provided cover for the murder ultimately betrayed the killer by washing away the camouflage he had so carefully arranged. Forensic evidence immediately contradicted the runaway theory. The coroner determined that Destiny had died from gunshot wounds, not from any accident or natural cause. DNA evidence from the scratches on her fingernails, combined with ballistics analysis of the bullets, created an investigative trail that led directly back to Bradley Hendricks. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation took over the case when local evidence pointed toward law enforcement involvement. Within 72 hours, they had matched the weapon to the sheriff's department evidence room and identified Hendricks as the last person to have official contact with Destiny Martinez. The arrest came at dawn on May 8, 2023. Hendricks was taken into custody at his home, in front of his wife and twin sons, as news crews captured footage of Pine Ridge's fallen hero being led away in handcuffs. The trial lasted 6 weeks, during which prosecutors methodically dismantled every element of Hendricks's cover story. Phone records, GPS tracking, forensic evidence, and witness testimony painted a complete picture of manipulation, abuse, and premeditated murder. Bradley Hendricks was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. The judge noted that his abuse of authority and betrayal of public trust warranted the harshest possible punishment under Colorado law. This case demonstrates how abusers exploit their positions to avoid consequences and why thorough investigations are essential when authority figures are involved. Most importantly, it shows that victims' families deserve justice, no matter how powerful their abuser may appear to be. The conviction of Bradley Hendricks sent shockwaves through Pine Ridge that continue reverberating today. A community that had prided itself on trust and safety was forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that their most respected protector had been their greatest threat. The impact on Pine Ridge's residents was profound and lasting. Property values declined as the town's reputation suffered national scrutiny. Tourism dropped significantly during the 2023 ski season as visitors questioned their safety in a place where the sheriff had committed murder. Local businesses struggled as the community grappled with its shattered sense of security. Policy changes followed swiftly. The Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department implemented mandatory psychological evaluations for all officers, established civilian oversight committees, and created anonymous reporting systems for misconduct allegations. Body cameras became standard equipment, and no officer could work alone with vulnerable individuals without backup present. The personal consequences for those connected to Hendricks were devastating. Rachel Hendricks filed for divorce within weeks of his arrest, relocating with their twin sons to her sister's home in Oregon. The boys, once proud of their father's career, now carry the burden of his crimes and the stigma of his name. His extended family faced harassment and social isolation that forced many to leave Pine Ridge permanently. Rosa Martinez never recovered from the double tragedy of losing her granddaughter and discovering the betrayal by someone she had trusted completely. She moved back to Denver, unable to remain in the town where destiny had suffered and died. The elderly woman's faith in authority figures was permanently shattered, a trauma that extended far beyond her personal loss. The broader implications of this case extend beyond Pine Ridge's borders. It demonstrates how predators systematically exploit positions of trust and authority to access vulnerable victims. The badge that should have represented protection became a weapon of manipulation and control. Most importantly, this case reminds us that Destiny Martinez was more than just a victim of a shocking crime. She was an 18-year-old girl with dreams, aspirations, and untapped potential. She loved music, hoped to study nursing, and wanted to help others who had experienced loss and trauma. Her pregnancy represented hope for a future that was stolen from both her and her unborn child. Communities must create better support systems for vulnerable individuals, especially those dealing with trauma, isolation, and economic hardship. We must teach young people to recognize grooming behavior and provide safe reporting mechanisms when authority figures cross boundaries. The importance of accountability for those in power cannot be overstated. No badge, no title, no position of respect should shield anyone from consequences when they abuse their authority. The justice system must be vigilant in investigating misconduct allegations, regardless of the accused person's status or reputation. This case reminds us that predators can hide behind any facade. If this story has impacted you, like this video, share it to help others recognize these warning signs, and subscribe for more cases that matter. We must never stop fighting for justice for victims like Destiny Martinez. Her memory deserves more than just sorrow. It demands action, vigilance, and an unwavering commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Only through continued awareness and accountability can we hope to prevent future tragedies and honor the lives lost to those who betrayed the trust we placed in them.